So hello and welcome to our Real Estate RICS Introduction to Professional Qualifications. If you are considering studying with us, this is an excellent opportunity to learn more about the course and have any questions answered before you submit your application. Feel free to utilise the chat function and interact with us. For those watching the recording, we understand that some individuals expressed an interest in attending but were unable to join due to prior commitments. If you find yourself in this situation, please email studyonline@manchester.ac.uk. I'm delighted to pass over to Dr. Mark Shepherd to introduce himself before we start with the webinar.
Hello everybody, thank you so much for joining us. As Phoebe said, my name is Mark Shepherd. I'm the Programme Director for this particular programme, and I'm also an RICS member and indeed an assessor for those who go on to do the RICS qualification. So hopefully I'll be able to help you along your journey towards becoming a chartered surveyor. I probably should start off by saying that sometimes individual circumstances can have an impact on where along the sort of continuum of qualification that you might engage with the RICS. So that if you do want to ask me questions, that's fine, but there may be some that I'll say, I'll come back to you on that, or let's exchange emails, because these can be quite specific and personal. But what I wanted to do today was introduce you to RICS qualifications themselves, tell you a little bit about how our course fits in with these qualifications, what the process is ultimately to becoming a chartered surveyor, why become a chartered surveyor, and then answer as many questions as I can that you have about either the course in general or the RICS in particular. So, I'm getting a bit carried away. So there are three main things I'm going to talk about. The first is I'm going to give you a bit of an introduction to, I guess, becoming qualified. Then why the RICS? You know, I think it's a legitimate question to ask. So I'll try and give you some answers to that. And then also talk about the process of becoming a chartered surveyor, because it's allied to, but complementary to, studying for an RICS accredited degree like the one that you're interested in. So I don't know how much you already know about the RICS, but they do cover a very broad range of built environment related areas. And actually, this is one of the RICS's own slides. And one of the things that it shows is that although there are a number of organizations that specialize in particular aspects of the built environment, one thing the RICS is particularly good at is that broader perspective. So it covers everything from, you know, the basics of what should we say, pre-development assessments, right through to the operation of buildings and beyond to their replacement, refurbishment, and so on. They're a big organization. As you can see, the majority of their members are in the UK and Europe, I should say. But I suppose that's natural from an institution that started out that way. But in recent years, it's become much more accepted internationally, particularly Pacific Rim and Africa and Asia. To some extent, in the United States, it tends to be a partnership qualification in the United States, that there will be a US-based qualification and a UK-based as well. But certainly the argument is that it takes a much more international perspective than perhaps people might have thought in the past. And I would certainly say that that is reflected in the students who come on our program. And I think, you know, a couple of things to bear in mind. I think the green point is very important. It's recognized by governments and markets around the world. And also, I guess, you know, there are professionals in, as it says here, 148 different countries. So wherever you are located, there's a very good chance that there will be RICS accredited professionals within a reasonable distance of you to get support and help if you need it, but we can talk about that more later. So I guess the RICS sees itself as having two roles. There's the advocacy role, supporting chartered surveyors, but it also has a regulatory role. And professionalism and ethics, I think it would argue at the very heart of what it does. And so, you know, all RICS professionals have to adhere to these 5 standards, ethical standards. I think most of them we would reasonably expect to exist, but they don't just pay lip service to it. They do expect members to follow it, and they do enforce it and check that that their members are following them. Indeed, one of the key elements to getting qualified as a chartered surveyor will be to demonstrate your understanding, your knowledge, and your commitment to ethical practice and professionalism. So I think a good question probably that I often get asked is why become a chartered surveyor? And I think that's a really good question. I mean, it starts from the idea that if you want to benefit from true professional status, then you need to be chartered. But I think for me, there are probably, I made a list of the things that I thought might be relevant to you. I think first of all, it's about competitive advantage. You know, it demonstrates a level of commitment and competence which is recognized by employers, and it's also recognized by clients. I think there are long-term career opportunities for chartered surveyors. Very often, you know, because of the way that the real estate business works, often employers want their senior people to have not just an academic qualification, but a professional qualification as well, so that they can demonstrate their knowledge, but also their competence, which kind of goes back to what I said in my first point. There's also a global network, so it's an international network that provides support wherever you work around the world. And also there's a substantial commitment to continuing professional development, or what I think we might call lifelong learning. The idea that once you're qualified, you don't stop learning, and in fact there's an obligation on RICS members to continue to keep up with the latest professional knowledge in their specialist area, and in fact we have to report on that as individual members each year. So it's partly about a mark of professionalism, a mark of competence, but also it's a network and an opportunity in a globally recognized organization. So a little bit about the RICS themselves. Some, you know, it's been around for quite a long time, so it's granted its royal charter, hence its name, the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, back in 1881. And it is still an independent professional body. So it regulates the profession independently of government. And as I say, it has two roles: supporting members and also promoting professional standards. And so it sets many of the professional standards which members then have to abide by. But for example, in my area of property valuation, there are international valuation standards, and RICS standards incorporate those international valuation standards, and in fact they are instrumental in developing them, but also their standards go beyond those international standards. Probably the thing you're most interested in, I guess, is, okay, you've said it's good to become a chartered surveyor, but how do I do that? Well, essentially, the route in is either by doing a cognate undergraduate program or some kind of conversion degree. Now, our program, this particular program in real estate, the MSc in Real Estate online, is an accredited conversion degree. The big benefit of that is it's designed to take graduates from other disciplines and give them the knowledge they need to become a chartered surveyor. It doesn't mean we cover everything. There are other things you have to do because there's a final assessment, which I'll explain about in a minute, but it's designed to give you that fundamental knowledge that you need to be able to move towards your professional qualification. So many people joining the program come from all sorts of different disciplines, everything from education to we've had linguists, we've had physicists, we've had the list is endless. But the key about this program is it recognizes that you're coming in often with either very specific real estate knowledge or indeed no real estate knowledge at all, and it's our role to help develop that and get you to the point where you can go out there and gain experience and ultimately qualify as a chartered professional. So, accredited conversion degree is our degree, and then the process to becoming chartered is that you have to work essentially for 2 years. So you have to have at least 2 years experience, after which you will prepare for your final assessment. And you can see it here, prepare your written submission, which is a summary of your experience and a case study of a particular thing that you've worked on, and a record of your CPD, your continuing professional development. You see it even happens with new career professionals. You then have to complete an online ethics module to demonstrate that you understand, so you have a knowledge of and are able to apply professional and ethical standards, and then you have the final assessment. So one thing before I talk about the final assessment is this 2 years minimum experience I'm talking about. Because of the way this program is structured, you can gain that experience alongside studying the program. So if you're a full-time student, you would have to study first, gain experience afterwards, or take time out on a placement or something like that. With this particular program, if you're working in real estate already, or you think you will be getting a role in real estate, then you can start recording your experience, working towards your professional qualification alongside your academic qualification. The only proviso is that you have to have successfully completed your degree before you can complete steps 3, 4, and 5, because they come at the end of that experiential period. So the final thing is the final assessment, okay? And the idea is you've got the academic knowledge from the degree, hopefully with some application. We don't just tell you stuff, we can give it context. But also you will have been working for typically about 2 years. And then you come in front of a panel of normally 3 chartered surveyors, and they will essentially interview you about your experience, about your case study, and essentially it's their job to ensure that you are fit to practice independently and to carry the designation of chartered surveyor. And certainly, well, partly to keep my hand in for my students, I'm still involved in this particular process. So not only do I teach, but I also assess new professionals who are coming into the industry. So hopefully, if you have questions about this, I'll be able to answer it. The thing I should say here is, as I mentioned earlier, everybody's circumstances are slightly different. So although I'd be delighted to answer questions about individual circumstances, I may not be able to do this immediately, but if you get in contact with Phoebe through the study online address below, if there are any questions about that sort of thing, she'll pass them on to me. Okay, so we're nearly there, but I thought it would be useful just to discuss some of the skills that would be needed for chartered surveyors. And these are, there are lots of important entrepreneurial skills here and transferable skills. So communication skills are incredibly important. Real estate is very much a people business. And so oral and written communications are incredibly important. Negotiating skills. Very often, chartered surveyors find themselves acting for either a landlord or a tenant, a buyer or a seller, and it's their job to get the best deal possible for their client. And part of that is about having effective negotiating skills. So you're going to be working with people at all sorts of different levels, not just surveyors, but other professionals, whether it's engineers or lawyers or whatever, developers. You're going to be engaged with all sorts of people like that. Like any industry, real estate is moving very fast in IT. That whole prop tech sector is evolving incredibly fast, and that's probably a whole conversation for another time. You've got to be able to solve problems within limited timescales, and often under a degree of pressure. That's the nature of doing business. You have to be able to write or deliver presentations and reports to clients or prospective clients or to colleagues about quite important technical or market issues. And often you'll be coordinating more than one project at a time. And there's certainly an argument, particularly if you're in the private sector, but these days equally in the public sector, that a certain entrepreneurial interest or flair will not do you any harm at all, because we're all working in a competitive market, and competitive advantage and adding value is what we're all about. That's what brings in the big bucks, or the fairly big bucks anyway. So I kind of mentioned just now, why join? I've given you some of the ideas, but I guess for me, the things that I've found most helpful are, as students, joining the RICS has added value in terms of access to support, to library facilities and all sorts of information facilities and so on. And indeed, they've been looking carefully at their, how they support students, and they've improved their offer. I've just recently seen a report on that. But the other good thing is it's free to join as a student member, and then it gets you into that network, and it often gives you access to events and things in your region, in your city, in your locality, that enables you to start building those networks of connections that help you progress your career. I guess the other thing is, it is genuinely, a badge of professionalism. A lot of jobs that are out there still ask for fully or partially qualified RICS professionals. When I say partially qualified, it's where they're looking towards their assessment of professional competence, their final test of chartered surveying status. So, even partially qualified members are in demand. But the RICS would say these things. I think an excellent qualification. I wouldn't argue with that. It's been very helpful to everybody I know who has it. Career progression through international qualification contacts. I think that's true. And one of the really good things about this course is that it is an international program, and you do get to connect with people all over the world. They have a range of professional groups, so whatever your area of interest, there is a group for you. You don't have to join it, but you can benefit from their knowledge and experience and so on. They support research themselves. They have their own research group, but they also fund research, both in universities and other professional organizations. And there's quite a lot of members-only information that's available, that's not available to the outside world. And of course, it recognizes that networking, contacts, communication within the industry is important, and so they try and facilitate that too. So here's a list of professional groups. You'll be very relieved to know I'm not going to talk you through them, but it gives you a flavor of how varied and potentially interesting a career in real estate can be. And you can be a member of more than one professional group. Certainly for myself, My two main areas are property valuation and law, or law and management, I suppose. And so, I'm in the valuation group, but I'm also in the commercial property group. And occasionally I touch base with the facilities management group as well. Many years ago, I was involved in developing some standards as part of a professional group, the RICS facilities management. So I've been around for a while. Anyway, the point is, whatever your interest, there's probably a group that is related to that, and therefore there is research and news and contacts to help you through. Okay, so if you want to be involved, become a student member. Okay, it's free. That's the web link. Just think about it, especially if you become a student, join as a student member. But if you're already working in real estate and you join the program and you want to know how to get onto the formal qualification route in terms of doing your experience, it has to be formally recorded. So you have to join the RICS as is called a probationary member, but basically you have to join the RICS and let them know that you're going to be recording experience towards your professional qualification. I'm happy to help you with that. But if you are at that point when you join the program, let me know. If you get a job in real estate partway through your time on the program, please let me know, and I'm happy to talk you through the process. Okay. Other than that, I think that's more than enough from me. I'm happy to answer any questions, so I'll pass you back to Phoebe.
Brilliant, thank you so much. So we've got quite a few questions actually. So I'll start with the first one. So how does the online Master's Real Estate program ensure practical experience and networking opportunities for students, considering the lack of physical presence on campus?
I think that's a great question. There are, I suppose, three answers to that, really. The first one is that in terms of practical experience, the course is designed by people who have practical experience themselves, and therefore we use case studies and practically focused projects to get you engaged with real life problems that we've experienced or something that we've developed out of our knowledge of real life problems. I think the second thing is that, and indeed the RICS encourages this, some of our units include group work. So there is, call it the opportunity, but also the need to work together with other students to produce collective work. Now, it's always a minority part of the assessment. So in terms of your final mark, the majority is still an individual assessment. But up to 25% of a unit could be group work. And there are two reasons for that. One is that the RICS considers, collective working, group working, an important transferable skill. And also from our point of view is it encourages interconnections between students. I guess the third way is a little bit more nebulous, and it depends partly on how you decide to use it. But generally the way that individual units work is that instead of having a regular lecture each week, the tutor has what we call office hours for drop-in. So it means you can come along whenever you wish during those times. So there are specific times where you can come along, but you can come along if you wish, for as many as you wish, to talk to the tutor about any aspect of the unit that you're particularly working on. So in that sense, there's the opportunity to meet the tutor live, and also to meet your fellow students if they're coming along live. And I suppose the final area, I know I said there were three, but that's just occurred to me, is that we run a 3-day induction at the start of the program, and part of the purpose of that is to initiate that networking opportunity and encourage you to work together as you work through the program. So that wasn't too long an answer, but hopefully that gives you some flavour of what might be involved.
Brilliant, thank you. So next question. With the real estate industry being highly location specific, how does the online program account for regional variations and local market dynamics?
another great question, to which I'll try and give a relatively short answer. The honest answer is, in one sense, we can't factor in every local market environment. But I think there are two ways we do try and do it. One is that a lot of the fundamentals are universal, but also a number of the projects allow students to apply their knowledge to their particular market, their particular locality, and subject to their particular laws and regulations. So, to give you an example, in my subject, property valuation, half the unit assessment is a valuation report, and it's a valuation report of a commercial real estate property, so pretty much anything that isn't residential, in a location of your choice. So if you're in a, if you want to test out your skills in your local market, then that's perfectly fine. Now, can we cover every market? No, but we do try and give you the principles. So that's another good example. Planning, for example, which is not really my area, so apologies if I'm a bit generic about planning, but there are several different general types of planning system, and we cover all of those. There's several different types of legal system. I would say the area, honestly, we find it most difficult is the area of the law, and certainly law is one of the options to study, but it is primarily UK centric. But most of the other units are have an international element to them and try and take that broader international view. But as I say, if you want to apply it to local markets, then we do give you the opportunity to do so. So
Brilliant.
That's, yeah.
Thank you. Next question is, real estate investment requires a deep understanding of financial analysis. How does the online program incorporate practical financial modeling and analysis skills?
Okay. As usual, there are two answers to that. The first one is the general answer, which is everybody addresses aspects of real estate markets, the basics of valuation, the basics of investment and finance. But if that is your specific area of interest, then we do actually have quite a number of students who are keen on that aspect. So one of the options available is called real estate modeling, which is very much focused on exactly that. So there are, the basics, the grounding comes in markets and valuation. Then there are applied aspects, so investment and finance, but also land and development, which looks at development appraisal, which admittedly is not quite what you were talking about, but nonetheless gives you an example. If there are specific aspects of financial modeling and market modeling that you're interested in, and statistical modeling, then real estate modeling is it would be the way to really grow those skills and enhance those skills. And one of our specialist tutors, that is his area of research and teaching, and so there's a terrific unit in that area. But everybody covers it to a certain level. If you want to take it beyond, then maybe consider choosing that option.
Brilliant, thank you. In the rapidly evolving real estate industry, how does the online program ensure that the curriculum stays up to date with the latest trends, technologies, and regulatory changes?
Okay. I won't lie, it can be tough to do that, like it can with any course, because all tutors are invited to update their units a few weeks before they run, as you would expect them to. And so part of that process, part of that reflection is about making sure that it's up to date and current issues. I think also different tutors do this in different ways, but we're often when we're sending out communications, we'll say, oh, and have a look at this article, there's an interesting developing area here, or there's a conversation about that somewhere. So we will be, different tutors run that in different ways. Some things are more stable than others. So valuation is relatively stable, but perhaps something like law changes quite quickly. So it does depend on the unit, but we do our best to try and have material that is as up to date as possible, but then also add in things that we think might be of interest or might be very topical as we go along. As I say, not everybody does that in the same way, but and I suppose the advantage of having the drop-ins is that you can come along and chat to the tutor. If you say, well, I saw this online, what's this all about? Come and have a chat with us. That's what we're here for.
Brilliant, thank you. You did touch on legal frameworks a bit earlier, but the next question is, real estate development often involves complex negotiations and legal frameworks. How does the online program provide students with the necessary skills to navigate these changes effectively?
Okay, in a way, that's I'll try and give you a succinct answer for a change. So I think part of it is about, we try and, in each unit, almost every unit, now I think about it, there are some aspects of legal practice or regulatory framework that people need to be aware of, whether it's in valuation, there are European, international, and RICS standards, as well as the legal environment in which you're working. So I would say each unit, and there's a theme of legal and regulatory framework that flows through a number of different units. So when you're looking at management, you'll also look at the legal framework for that. If you're looking at development, the same. But there is also a unit called Real Estate Law in Practice, which is an option. The thing I need to say is, one of the challenges, and probably law is the most challenging, is that because there are so many different versions, if you like, different countries interpret different things in different ways, that it is a challenge to make that aspect truly international. Now, we will give you the skills to negotiate, to read legal documents, to apply legal thought and knowledge, but I can't hand on heart guarantee that that will be specific to your particular locality or the particular legal system that you're working with, but we will give you the skills that would allow you to apply those to that context. I think that's the best way I can answer it. Yeah, I think that's probably the answer.
Brilliant, thanks. So next one, real estate is known for its cyclical nature, yes, with periods of booms and busts. Absolutely. How does the online program prepare students to navigate and make informed decisions during such market fluctuations?
Okay, I think initially real estate markets is I guess really partly about real estate economics and an introduction to real estate economics, and cycles are very much part of that. So that's certainly something that's covered at that point. Then it's kind of embedded in a number of different units. So for example, in valuation, we touch on it, but I think what we try to do is not pick material that's only indicative of one point in the economic cycle. So obviously we've had in the UK, for example, we've had a fairly long period of sustained low interest rates, which is now changing. But I and a number of my colleagues are old enough to remember when they were higher and lower through boom and bust. So, sorry, I don't mean to be flippant, but I guess what I'm saying is, I think a lot of the skills and knowledge that you will have will be applicable to a broad range of market conditions, and certainly a number of colleagues focus on these specifically, and I think it's something that is sufficiently important that we highlight it as the first unit that you study. But also it comes through conversation, through when you're doing assignments, you're going to be looking at market conditions, and those are kind of conversations that we might end up having as you're working on and preparing for assignments. Is, well, how does this relate to the current environment, or what about if this changes? This is exactly the sort of discussion that we might have.
Brilliant, thank you. Does your work experience for 2 years have to be with a company, or can it involve being self-employed by your own company?
It's complicated. The simple answer is that normally your experience should be done under the supervision of a more senior surveyor, but they don't necessarily have to be a surveyor. So let me give you an example. So if you're not working in a real estate firm and you're working for yourself, are you working, sorry, this is a rhetorical question, but are you working with another firm? So for example, a few years ago, I had 2 graduates who set up their own firm, but they're working very closely with a firm of architects. And so they were being, if you like, supervised on a day-to-day basis by this firm they were in a close partnership with. And that meant that even though they were working on their own, they could be supervised. So the honest answer is, it is challenging, and it probably depends on your individual circumstances. If you're working for someone else, it is much easier. But if you're working for yourself, it's not impossible. That's probably one of the examples of a conversation we ought to have beyond today's session. But I'm happy to have that conversation. If you want to drop me an email or use the email there, and Phoebe will pass it on to me.
Brilliant, thank you. How does the online program facilitate access to industry professionals, mentors, and guest speakers to provide real-world insights and networking opportunities for students?
That's a great question. So I'm saying that about everyone, aren't I? But anyway, it is a good question. I think it depends on the individual tutor and the individual context. So, for example, some tutors who have relationships with outside speakers will record those sessions. So, for example, we get visitors on campus to talk to our campus-based students, but we will often capture that session and try and make it available to our online students. Indeed, I've run sessions where we've had a sort of blended delivery, so that there's been somebody in a classroom, but it's also been available on Zoom. Now, that doesn't happen all the time, but I suppose the other honest truth is we're open to ideas. The reason I say that is that we used to run more of a blended program where students would come in, but students found it really difficult to come in. So the idea of moving online was that that's what students told us that they wanted. Nevertheless, I think it's something that we're going to have to work on to make sure that you still do get that interactivity. So if there's, and certainly part of my job is, if you join the course, you think, oh, I'd like to know more about this, or I'd like to hear more from so-and-so, or, I'd like an opportunity to get together. I will do my best to facilitate that, because that's kind of what I'm here for. So I apologize if that's a slightly evasive answer, but it depends on the individual tutor. Some tutors bring people in, some tutors provide recordings of sessions that they brought in, some tutors kind of offer opportunities for students to get together and discuss. So there are synchronous ways that you might expect, like getting people in an online room, but also asynchronous ways through discussion boards or other sort of chat or exchange tools. So it's quite a mixture. But I think, if there's something that you need, then please don't feel you can't mention it, and I will certainly see what I can do.
Brilliant, thank you. I like the flexibility of an online course, but if we happen to miss a course unit for whatever reason, is there an opportunity to retake it?
Yes, but it depends on the reason. So, for example, the program is certainly designed to be studied in a certain order up to a certain point. Nevertheless, if circumstances dictate that you have to take some time out, then there are ways of facilitating that. The only thing you can't do is move on to the final stage, which is the option and the dissertation, until you've successfully completed all of the taught elements. or at least studied all of the taught elements, I should probably say. So although it is flexible up to a point, because you are studying units in series, and it's reasonably tightly compacted because it's squeezed into 2 years. Squeeze sounds wrong, I don't mean that, but I just mean it is carefully designed to get you to the point you need to be at in 2 years. Then if you take time out, it's the point at which you can rejoin. Units tend to only run once a year, so if you miss it at that point, you may have a gap while you wait for it to run again. That doesn't mean you can't do other things in the meantime, but if in the unlikely event that you needed time out and you missed the last unit, you'd have to wait till that came round again before you could. So that might be 6 months, but that's the worst case scenario.
Brilliant, thank you. So I wanted to find out if it's possible to pursue the pathways for the valuation aspect, for example, general valuation and valuation of intangible assets.
Right. General valuation, yes. Intangible assets is not really what we cover in any great detail. We touch on it because it's an aspect of valuation, but we're focused on real assets. So I would say most of the material is about real estate, real assets, land, buildings, or a combination of those two. The more intangible aspects is something that we don't specifically cover. That's not to say, again, that it's not something we couldn't have a conversation about, or if it's in the context of, what's a good context? So, for example, if you're valuing a business that relies on a turnover approach to valuation where goodwill, for example, is an important part of that valuation process, then that's a different matter. But again, it's something I'm happy to have a conversation about, but our principal focus is essentially on physical assets and real assets.
Brilliant, thank you. Can you share some details about the ongoing research and innovation happening within the online real estate program and how students can get involved in those initiatives?
Okay, I guess the most obvious way, although there are others, is through the research project, which comes at the end of the program. So you will work with an individual supervisor to develop a piece of research work on a topic of your choice. So what happens is, typically, you will come up with a research idea, maybe in conversation with one or more members of staff. On the basis of that topic choice, you'll be allocated to a tutor who will be able to support you through the research process in that particular subject area. And then you'll work together on producing, well, I say work together, you'll do the work, but they'll support you in producing essentially a 10,000 word piece of research about an aspect of real estate. And within our department, we have quantitative specialists, we have qualitative specialists, we have people looking at markets, looking at AI, looking at statistics. I honestly, the list would be too long to give you right now, but I guess what I'm saying is all of the staff delivering units are research active in some way, and that informs some of the material that they share with you within the units. But also, if you have a particular interest in something you want to pursue, then we'll pair you with someone for your project who can help you, take it that much further. In fact, usually by the end of it, the student, because they've been looking at a very narrow subject in an awful lot of detail, probably end up knowing more about it than we do about that very specific thing. But we're all active researchers, so our job is to help you through that process too.
Brilliant. Mark, you mentioned AI, which takes us on to this next question.
Yes.
It was inevitable. Has the course considered the developments of artificial intelligence and how it will impact the role of the chartered surveyor?
How do I answer that question? I mean, I think it is a current area of discussion across the whole university and the whole profession. And in fact, We've been having conversations with the RICS. We've been having conversations internally. Do I have an answer for you? Probably not yet, but yes, it is and will continue to be considered. And I think, you know, that whole area of prop tech is an area that will only become more significant. So yeah, it's a bit of watch this space, but we hope that, you know, as its application to real estate evolves, or indeed its application to education evolves, that we are, you know, we are having those discussions, we are investigating those aspects, and we'll be sharing them with you as they emerge.
Brilliant, thanks. So we'll just have one last question before we finish. Can you provide examples of successful projects or research initiatives that have been undertaken by online real estate students in the past, demonstrating the program's practical applicability?
Well, that, I have to say, is a really good question, which I'm not sure I can answer easily off the cuff. I could give you a general answer, but because individual supervisors are responsible for supervising individual students, we don't always know exactly what our fellow supervisors are doing. I can give you some examples from my own supervision. So, for example, I recently supervised some very good research into crowdfunding and how that might impact on real estate development, for example. There was another piece of research that a student did on the different models that Chinese real estate firms should adopt. The asset heavy model, which is very much focused on sort of investing in physical tangible assets, and the asset light model, which is very much about leveraging their experience. And anyway, I won't bore you with the details, but I'd be happy to give you, or maybe even give Phoebe to post more generally some examples of the sort of research topics and research that students have been doing, to give you some ideas. But I find it quite difficult to list off now, because there are lots that my colleagues are doing that I'm not directly involved in, because there's that one-to-one relationship between student and tutor, and generally the marking comes to two people, and we're a big enough team that we don't see all of those projects as individual tutors. But I'd be happy to provide you with that information. Perhaps few would know how best to distribute that, but I'd be happy to do that.
Brilliant, thank you. And would they have access to the completed researches or not?
I don't actually know. I'll have to look into that. I'll need to ask the unit tutor whether they're made available or not.
Brilliant, thank you. So that was the very last question.
Right.
So thank you so much, Mark, for providing valuable answers to the questions raised today. If you require any further assistance with your applications or would like to schedule a personal consultation, please be on the lookout for an email that will provide instructions on how to proceed. Additionally, we will include the recording of this webinar, allowing you the opportunity to revisit and review the content at your convenience. So just whilst I still have you here, I'd just like to remind you that there is an early application discount for this course that's running until the 26th of June. So please do make sure that you submit your full applications before this date to make sure that this applies for you. So just once again, thanks so much, Mark, and thank you everyone for attending.
Absolutely, pleasure. Thank you, everybody. And as I say, if you've got any specific questions, please contact Phoebe, and I'm sure she'll pass them on to me if they're ones she thinks I can answer.